what's going on, boys? I am back for another video on this channel. Sorry, I've just had a lot going on these past couple of weeks. Vacations, sicknesses, injuries, all this stuff. So this channel has been put on the back burner a little bit. But we are finally back for the USA. Let's go, baby. I know were some weak sauce excuses, but whatever. It's okay. I got a lot of ideas for this channel. And the first one is going to be a US president tier list. Okay. So I've had to add some tiers because I tried to record this video where there was only like 4 or 5 and it was like impossible. And we're not going to be doing every single president. We're going to be doing the interesting ones. No modern because we're apolitical on the channel for now. All right. We're going to go in chronological order of the interesting presidents. If there's a president that is not in this video, that means I didn't want to put him on there or it's modern. So starting us off with one of the GOATs, starting us off in the S tier, the big 3, we got George Washington. Let's clap it up for George Washington. He's the first president, started America. For the Founding Fathers, I'm going to attribute some pre-presidential accomplishments to them because they were just so important for the founding of the country. It's literally in the name. And they were acts that we can't ignore, right? Washington led us to victory against the British. Send them packing. Absolute GOAT. One of the big 3 for sure. Now, Johnny Adams. No, he's not straight up bad. He's not D tier. I would say he's C tier. He was overall bad, but he did have some upsides, okay? So it was one big upside. A lot of people in his party and a lot of people in the country wanted us to go to war with France. He did not want to go to war with France because we're a brand new country with a tiny military who was in debt to France. France is a big old country with a lot of territory right next to us, with a big old army. We weren't going to win that. Especially with nobody to help us. What, are the British going to help us? We just went to war with the British. They're not going to help us. Are the Spanish going to help us? No, the Spanish aren't going to help us. They don't care. So, John Adams, that was your good. Your bad. He tried to put restrictions on immigration, which, from a certain perspective, I understand. You want to keep the country the same. It's a new country. You want to keep the people that made it. But, on the flip side, he did it for political reasons, and he even admitted he was doing it because he feared immigrants would vote for Thomas Jefferson. He admitted that was the reason. So that's blatant using the powers of the president against political opponents. Washington established. This was one of the reasons Washington's in the S tier. Apolitical, obviously he was political to an extent, but against political parties. He was against foreign wars that didn't benefit America. He set the precedent for what the president should be. John Adams wasn't following that. George Washington was also a huge proponent of the Bill of Rights, first 10 amendments. You can't really talk about these guys separate from each other. And John Adams was his vice president as well. But John Adams, he also tried to censor speech against the government. He tried to ban it. He tried to criminalize it. That's why I put him in overall bad, but he had the upside of no war with France. Now, Thomas J. Jefferson. No, it wasn't actually Thomas J. Jefferson. I'm going to put him in a B+. Now we're getting there, okay? We're getting there with Jefferson. I think he's a little overrated, okay? Because a lot of people put him here. A lot of people put him here. Some people put him here because he's on Mount Rushmore. No. I'd say he's a solid B+. He didn't do a crazy amount. Like, he wrote the Declaration of Independence, okay? Great. I think we would have declared independence anyway. But he did the Louisiana Purchase, Lewis and Clark expedition to, discover the land out there. But he did lower the size of the military. Like, he decreased the size of the military a lot when we have Britain to our north, who we were just at war with, France to the west, who we were about to be in a war with, and you have Spain to the south in Florida and the Caribbean, and you got Spain out in what is now like California and Texas and stuff too. There's a lot of really big, powerful countries on our borders and very close to us. I don't think that was the move at the time. So also Jefferson was sort of impartial to slavery, which is why he's not great, but he doesn't have that, like, bar the Declaration of Independence, he doesn't really have the, like, knockout punch. You know, Louisiana Purchase is cool, but Napoleon kind of handed him that on a silver platter. Anyway, his right-hand man, I believe his vice president, James Monroe, I think the most underrated founding father by a lot. James Monroe, strong argument for top 3, but not actually top 3 in my book. So that's what the A+ tier is. They have an argument. You could argue that they are, but I don't think they are. So let's cheer it up for James Madison. I almost said Monroe. He's coming in a second. Father of the Constitution, one of the main authors. Also, Bill of Rights. That was him. Right to free speech. So what I'm doing right now, I might be arrested. Who knows without James Madison? You know what I mean? I might be locked up. And then, obviously, the Constitution as well. Probably the greatest governing document ever written. Second Amendment, right to bear arms. Absolutely goated. He did have the War of 1812, which can be argued as a negative, and I think overall it was, but it did strengthen the country in its legitimacy, saying, okay, we didn't just beat Britain once. We did it again, this time with next to no help. I mean, we had help from Napoleon distracting them, but they launched multiple invasions, failed multiple invasions. We launched invasions ourselves that also failed, but we survived our first, big war on home soil. That wasn't a war for independence. So the War of 1812, while it was a negative, James Madison kind of turned it into a positive. Now, James Monroe, I would put him in B. I think he was effective, and he was decently good, but he did have some downsides, okay? So he presided over the era of good feelings. I have notes off to this side, by the way, for some of these guys, but most of them I'm going to do off the dome. Presided over the era of good feelings. And there was only one political party. So the Federalist Party had collapsed, and the Democratic Republicans, that's crazy to hear in 2026, by the way, but the Democratic Republicans were the only political party in the country, and he used that immense political power. He was elected almost unanimously because there was only one political party. He used that immense power to kick slavery down the road. He also presided over the first economic crisis in American history, one of the first recessions. And kicking slavery down the road, I said Missouri Compromise. But overall, there was a surge in national patriotism. The era of good feeling. Everybody had a good feeling about the country. And he had the Monroe Doctrine, which is, bolstering him as well. Because the Monroe Doctrine, that's aura. Nobody's interfering in our hemisphere. This is our fortress. I'm very pro Monroe Doctrine, which is why I have him high. But I can't really have him any higher due to he could have done a lot more against slavery than he did. Now, next up, Andrew Jackson. I'm going to put him in the same tier as John Adams. Overall bad, but he had an upside. We're going to talk about the upside first the same way we did John Adams, okay? So, Andrew Jackson. Before Andrew Jackson, you had to be a white man owning property to vote. After Andrew Jackson, you only had to be a white man to vote. Let's go, baby! Don't have to own property to vote anymore. But there were a couple of bad things he did. So the Trail of Tears, that's obviously a mark on his legacy. He overruled the Supreme Courts, which people say it's aura or whatever. Andrew Jackson did have some crazy aura. Don't get it wrong. He was cool, but it's you shouldn't be doing that. Especially when the country's still so new. You shouldn't be overruling the Supreme Court and trying to, undo the government. Now, also, he put a lot of his friends in the cabinet. That's not a good precedent to set. It should be based on merit. And also, he was extremely pro-slavery. And he got rid of the First National Bank. So I'm not too big of a fan, but he did have the upside of getting voters' rights for the regular dude. Now, next up, one of my favorites, James Jimmy John Polk. Let's go, James Polk. he's one of the GOATs, dude. So people say his war against Mexico is unjust or whatever. Dude, every country does unjust wars, all right? This war just so happened to be probably one of, if not the most beneficial things to ever happen to America. It was quick. Listen, people say it's unjust. The casualties weren't like crazy high. I mean, they were high. Listen, and I'm not justifying it. I'm not saying it was a just war. Okay? But let's not act like Mexico was innocent either. You know what I mean? They invited American settlers to come to Texas and then got mad when they wanted to join America. Mexico's not entirely innocent here either. So I wouldn't say it makes it right, but there were some crazy benefits to it. Like, we got undisputed dominance on the continent. So if there was no Mexican-American war, Mexico would be a real rival to the United States right on our doorstep. I think we were going to war with them at some point anyway. People say it drew us closer to the Civil War, which it did, but again, I feel like there was going to be a Civil War anyway. James Polk was knocked by, obviously the war was immoral, unjust, whatever. And then it brought us closer to the Civil War. He was a big proponent of slavery. These things can all be washed away because, listen, at the end of the day, we benefited so heavily. The amount of people whose lives were improved as a butterfly effect of the Mexican-American War, the millions and millions of people who live in that land now, is insane. Also, that wasn't the only way he got us land. He also got us land by resolving the border dispute between us and the British, and he did that peacefully. He also tried to buy the land from Mexico peacefully. Mexico refused. I would have liked to have gained a little more from Mexico, actually. I would have liked for him to have been effective in negotiating for Baja California, so that, my vacation to Cabo would have been more filled with air conditioning and good cell service. But anyway, that's besides the point. James Buchanan. James Buchanan sucked. He was largely responsible for the Civil War, super pro-slavery, didn't do anything when the Southern states seceded. Next up. That was terrible. Now, a lot of you are going to think I'm going to put this guy top 3. But Abraham Lincoln. Strong argument for top 3. Mount Rushmore president. I would say number 4 all time. Held the Union together. Won the Civil War. Abolished slavery. And established, this is what he doesn't get credit for, established national currency. Very, very good president. The only thing is he did act a bit like a dictator in some instances. He did establish a lot of big government ideas, but you know what? That I'm waving that all away. What he did was ultimately good. The only reason I don't have him higher is because I feel like his role was sort of replaceable. You know what I mean? He could have been swapped out for another guy who maybe would have ended the war faster. Maybe would have picked different generals and maybe would have beaten the South beforehand. Maybe he gets Robert E. Lee on the Union side. Who knows? But no, I'm joking. That's never going to happen. But Lincoln was overall good. I just feel as though he was replaceable. Not like literally anybody could have done it, but I feel like there are other people that could have done it. Now, Andrew Johnson, also in the trash tier. We go from number 4 all time to one of the worst all time. And Andrew Johnson was his VP. He should have just listened to what Lincoln did. Andrew Johnson supported the KKK, handled the reintegration of the South terribly. He was the first president to ever be impeached, which I forgot. Thank you to my notes. Due to his overstepping of the boundaries by firing civil officers. So he was the first president to really honestly, you could have argued that Jackson was the first president that should have been impeached because he overruled the Supreme Court, but Johnson was the first one to actually do it. He got acquitted by 1 vote, the closest we've ever got to removing a president from office. So overall, and he didn't really do anything good either to bring him up. So he was just straight up bad. Now, Ulysses S. Grant. He's going to be our first entry into the C+ tier. Good intentions, but ineffective. He was the first president to have, like, a corrupt administration. Okay, I forget exactly what he did, but a lot of people say that's where the corruption in government started, was with Grant. But here's the thing. He tried to get African-American voting rights. He tried to get, a Civil Rights Act passed, but he largely failed at all that stuff. He tried to make peace with the Native Americans, but he failed. So that's why I have this good intentions but ineffective category. It's pretty much named after Grant. But he also gave us a return to the gold standard, linked the dollar to gold once again. I believe that's what that means. And then settled conflict with the UK. Because there was a possibility of another war with the UK, which Grant resolved. Okay, as I was editing this video, Ulysses S. Grant, I wasn't familiar with your game, okay? I wasn't familiar with the game. I'm sorry, Ulysses S. Grant. I said he failed to get black civil rights and black voting rights. He did not fail. That was a big stinker on my part. I'm sorry. Big stinker, okay? He got black voting rights, and he got black civil rights, but the black civil rights after he left office got overturned. So I'm actually I'm putting him in B+. I'm sorry. He still did have the corruption in his administration, but yeah, I'm sorry. Also, is my hair okay? Because what was that? Why did my hair look so bad in this video? I don't know, bro. But anyways, back to your regularly scheduled programming. Now, another entry into the big three. We got Mr. Teddy, Big Ted Roosevelt himself. Let's go. Teddy Roosevelt might be in the S tier off the aura alone. Okay? But I like him because he preached assimilation. He went after big businesses. He established national parks. Okay, this shouldn't factor into my ranking of a president, but it's my video. I can do whatever I want. Boxer, judoka, shot in the chest, all this stuff. Crazy, bro. And he's saying, like, loyalty to the country doesn't mean loyalty to the president. He's just, dude, he's what an American is. But yeah, he put his finger down on monopolies. He allowed for injured workers to sue their employers, which is really good. And he had his big stick diplomacy. The only negatives were he wasn't great to the Native Americans, but you know what? That's like that's pretty much every single person bar Grant that's on this list. So I can give him a pass for that one. Now, another one in the, you know what? I'm debating on if I should put Woodrow Wilson in the straight up bad tier or the overall bad but had an upside. I'm going to put him in the straight up bad tier. Woodrow Wilson, he introduced the income tax. Prohibition started under his presidency. He brought back segregation in the federal government. He introduced conscription in World War I. He censored the anti-war attitude. He got a Nobel Peace Prize for some, I think it was because he started the League of Nations. He didn't care about the Spanish flu, didn't really do anything to stop its spread, which you could say, like, oh, COVID, whatever, blah, blah, blah. Like, look at what happened with COVID. But, dude, the Spanish flu was way more deadly than COVID ever was. Completely different. He wanted to promote democracy overseas. He was the first president to really try to do that, which you see where that's gotten us since. It's very costly, and it doesn't really benefit Americans. And then he introduced the 19th Amendment, allowing women to vote. We're going to leave that there. That could be seen as one of the upsides, yeah. Now, Calvin Coolidge. Calvin Coolidge, I'm going to put Calvin Coolidge in a B+. I'd say he's in the now we're getting at. I'm not saying he's better than Jefferson. I'm saying right here. These aren't really ordered. Yeah, these actually, I would say these are in my correct order right now. Yeah, I would say these are in my correct order so far. He's not over Jefferson, but Jefferson's kind of at the top of the tier. He's kind of at the bottom. Calvin Coolidge, he presided over the Roaring Twenties. He gave citizenship to Native Americans. He he governed like with a small government, with low taxes, low intervention in big businesses, allowing for the Roaring Twenties to be so economically prosperous for the United States. And overall, he was just a good president, presiding over an economically prosperous era. A lot of people romanticize him and they'll put him like, dude, Calvin Coolidge, man, he's up here, bro. He's up here, bro. Okay, you're getting ahead of himself. You're getting ahead of yourself. Like, you know, he doesn't have crazy aura. He doesn't have all this stuff. Like, he was cool. He did some good. Wasn't really any bad. And whatever bad there was, it was kind of meh. Now, Herbert Hoover. Ba-bam. Another stinker. Basically, he presided over the Prohibition, did nothing about it. Crime ran rampant. And a lot of people blame him for the Great Depression. Well, you can also, you know, you can kind of retroactively blame Calvin Coolidge, but Herbert Hoover didn't do anything to stop it. He saw it coming. The Great Depression started in his presidency, I believe. And he was very ineffective at stopping it, and there wasn't really any upside with Herbert Hoover. FDR. I'm considering a B. I can't put him here because he was very effective at what he did. Okay? So it can either be overall bad, and upside, effective and good, but had one big downside. I'm going to put it here. Okay? I'm going to have him underneath Monroe because he was a little bit more consequential. But here's the thing. Everyone's like, dude, he won World War II and got us out of the Great Depression. Well, you can also say he prolonged the Great Depression. Because his New Deal, while people say like, oh, that's what ended the Great Depression, it can also be what prolonged it at the same time. Because a lot of the Great Depression did preside under his administration. The other thing is with World War II. So everyone's like, dude, he won World War II. Well, he also got us involved in World War II. Now, you could argue that in hindsight, we needed to be in World War II because we were going to get into a Cold War with Nazi Germany and Imperial Japan either way, and we needed to take a stance on it. But at the time, it's like, do you really want to get us involved in this overseas where, you know, we're going to be safe over here in America either way? Do you really want to antagonize the Axis powers like this? And I understand they're bad, but is this really our war to be fighting? The Mustache Man called him a warmonger. He was kind of right. And then also, he broke the tradition of running for 2 consecutive terms and then stepping down. He also had the Japanese imprisonment. He was one of the closest things we had to a dictator. I don't know. There's a lot of bad. There's a decent amount of good. He did end the Prohibition, which is good as well. I think smack dab in the middle at B is where I'm going to put him. He's a tough one, though, because you can argue he's here. You can argue he's here as well. Like, you can kind of argue everywhere. I've seen people put him top 3. I've seen people put him at the very bottom. I'm going to keep it neutral. I'm going to put him in the middle, okay? Harry S. Truman. I'm going to put him at the top of B, okay? Arguably here, but he did have one big downside. Here's the thing with Harry Truman. He had a lot of good, okay? I have notes on Truman. He introduced the CIA. He introduced term limits in the Constitution. He had the Marshall Plan. He had the end of World War II. So people say the nuking of Japan was completely unjustified or whatever. You can argue the justification for it. But here's the thing. It was the lesser of 2 evils. It was either we're going to nuke them and between 100 to 200,000 casualties are going to happen. We're going to starve them out where it's going to be 1 to 2 million casualties. Almost all civilian are going to happen. Or we're going to nuke them where it's going to be 100, 200,000. Wait, sorry. Or we're going to invade them and it's going to be like 4 million on their side, 1 million on our side. There's going to be civilian casualties either way. So he was stuck between a rock and a hard place. It's kind of like what do you want to do? What strategy do you want to take? You could say, oh, well, he didn't have to drop 2. Yeah, he kind of did because the Japanese knew about the bomb, but they thought we only had 1. So it's like, you know, it's kind of, it's kind of a lose-lose situation. So the bad is the Korean War. Now, I'm not saying we shouldn't have defended South Korea. I'm saying he should have gotten congressional approval before doing so. Because this set the precedent for presidents in the modern era to get us involved in overseas conflicts with little benefit to Americans at the whim of the president with no checks and balances in place, no congressional approval. That's why he's not higher. I'd probably put him in one of these two. I believe he also established the UN, if I'm correct. And there are a couple other good things he did that are slipping my mind. But I really don't like that precedent that he set, so I'm knocking him down a tier. But he is at the top of B. I do think he was better than these two. Especially for the term limits in the Constitution as well, because I think that saved us later down the road. Now, Dwight D. Eisenhower. Oh, wait, no. Truman didn't set up NASA. It was Eisenhower. My bad. I think I'm going to put him in B+. Okay? I think I'm going to put him in B+. Probably here. Truman was good. Let's cheer him. Cheer him on. He established NASA. End of the Korean War. He built he got America out of Korea, which was a big campaign promise. He built the highway system to evacuate cities in event of a nuclear fallout. And then the things that I'm knocking for him, why he's not here, because he could easily be here, was I didn't like his foreign interventions in Iran. I didn't like his foreign intervention in Cuba. He set up the Bay of Pigs invasion. It was initially drafted in his presidency. He put nukes in Turkey right on the Soviet border, inviting them to put them in Cuba. I don't think that's great. And then also he was a big proponent of, we just need to bolster our nuclear arsenal so that we outpace the Soviets, which I don't think was the way to go about the Cold War. And it kind of escalated it. But I think NASA, the highway system, and the end of the Korean War outweigh that to the point where I'm going to put him in B+. Now, JFK, baby! I got JFK at number 1, maybe number 2. I think these two are kind of interchangeable. JFK had crazy aura. That's the theme with the big three. They all had crazy aura. But here's JFK's resume. If you think I'm overrating him, glazing him, whatever, here's his resume. He had not just 1, but 2 instances where the world could have ended in his 3-year presidency. He avoided both of them. Now, the Cuban Missile Crisis, people say that he started it because he drafted the Bay of Pigs and he put the missiles in Turkey and he kept the missiles in Turkey. No, dude, that was Eisenhower. We just went over, that was this dude. JFK navigated it, and he steered us clear of nuclear war. What a goat. JFK also drafted the Civil Rights Act. And well, actually, the next thing I'm going to talk about with Johnson, okay? The Civil Rights Act was flawed, okay? Had its flaws. The legislation during that time did have negative effects to it. It could have been a little bit more fleshed out. But here's the thing, JFK was eliminated before it went into effect. So he was really pushing these ideas. Then also he put us on the moon. Okay? And then the second time the world almost ended, well, technically the first, but the second most infamous was the Checkpoint Charlie crisis, where he called up Khrushchev on the phone and inched the tanks away from Checkpoint Charlie. So he saved the world 2 times Whereas another president, I feel like maybe Richard Nixon, I don't know. But I feel like anybody else may have gotten us into a nuclear war. And you say, oh, the Bay of Pigs invasion failed. Well, what's the alternative? We support them, they overthrow the Cuban regime, and then the Soviets launch a nuclear missile at us? Yeah, I don't think that's any better. I don't think that's a better alternative. I don't think the Bay of Pigs was a success, because it obviously just was not. But I think the failure was the lesser of two evils in that situation, if you get what I mean. Now, his successor, Lyndon B. Johnson. I'm gonna put him here. So he didn't have... I'm going to put FDR at the top of this tier. I'm going to put Lyndon B. Johnson in this tier, because I might just change the name of it to mid. Because FDR, like I said, he had a lot of good. He had a lot of bad as well. Lyndon B. Johnson, he got the Civil Rights Act passed, but I give that largely to Kennedy. He set up a lot of social programs, which had varying degrees of success. But the thing with him, so there's two things. One, he got us involved in Vietnam. Horrible decision. I think he also... Okay, I think he also imposed the draft, which, that's a really big stain. If you combine it with Vietnam, that's terrible. He definitely can't be up here with Vietnam in the draft. Now, the public services like PBS, Medicare, Medicaid, all this stuff. So, now, the other thing is, with the Civil Rights Act, he also passed immigration reform. Now, this saw the removal of the national origin quotas in immigration. And the difference between him and JFK, and why I don't knock JFK for doing it, but I do knock, or for thinking about it, but I do knock Lyndon Johnson for doing it, is because JFK wanted to prioritize highly skilled workers, whereas Lyndon Johnson, what actually ended up happening was he literally just split it 50-50. So, like, 50% families in that, like, connecting families in the U.S., which I don't think is how an immigration system on a national level should operate, and then 50% just kind of anything else. You know what I mean? Some workers, some not, whatever, blah, blah, blah. And JFK wanted to gradually ease the national origin quotas out of the picture. Lyndon Johnson just completely scrapped them all together, where I feel like that has caused lasting issues with assimilation. Now, Richard Nixon. The B tier, effective and good, but had one big downside. Emphasize the big. That's Richard Nixon, okay? So here's the good. Richard Nixon removed the troops from Vietnam, abolished the draft, started the Environmental Protection Agency, ended discrimination against women in education, de-escalated the Cold War via détente, and easing tensions with China. Also signed SALT to denuclearize both the United States and the Soviet Union. Wow! That's all really good, isn't it? Well, he had Watergate. Nixon would honestly be like here or here if he didn't have Watergate. Watergate, you could put him down here just because that's how bad it is, but I'm going to throw him a bone. I'm going to put him here because he didn't really have too much that was bad about his administration outside of Watergate. So I'm going to be even. Like, Nixon had genuine potential to be an A+. So I can't just strip that away from me. You know what I mean? He made staggering progress. But Watergate was one of the worst, if not the worst, scandals in U.S. history. So we're gonna throw Nixon. That was bad. You know what I mean? But we're gonna be fair. We're gonna put him 50-50. Now, Jimmy Carter. I feel really bad for Jimmy Carter. okay? Jimmy Carter, I initially made the good intentions but ineffective for Grant and Jimmy Carter. But upon further review of Jimmy Carter's presidency, he was a great guy. Like, he was a stand-up dude. He wanted the best for the country, but I have to put him in the bad tier. Because there just wasn't anything good that he did. I feel so bad. Because he's such a nice dude. He's just a humble little peanut farmer. But there was just genuinely not much good that occurred in his presidency. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, there just wasn't. It's very difficult to come to terms with, because I like Jimmy Carter as a guy. But let me read off my notes. Got rid of the Panama Canal. Gave it to Panama for no reason. Iran hostage crisis, recession, and the USSR invasion of Afghanistan. Also, the USSR was bolstering up their strength under his presidency because they saw him as weak. And I didn't have anything good that he did. If there was something good that he did, please make sure to put it in the comments. And I'll change his... I would change his ranking to C tier, because I would really love to. But, dude, there was just nothing there. There's just nothing there. Okay, now, Ronald Reagan, his successor. I'm going to put Reagan in... either B or top of C. I feel like a lot of people will either put Reagan here or here. I don't see much people putting him here. This is a very nuanced take for me. I think I'm going to put him the very bottom of B tier, because he was effective and he had a good economy, right? He had a good economy while he was the president. Here comes the money. Like, here we go. There was here comes the money. Low unemployment, high job growth, tax cuts, mostly for corporations and the rich, and it worked in the beginning. Okay, it worked in the beginning. Here we go. And high amounts of national pride, because people liked Reagan. You know what I mean? At the time, but he armed a bunch of Arab terrorist groups. War on drugs was ultimately a failure. Like, he didn't really... It's a good idea. It's a good idea to go to war with drugs. But in practice, it just put a bunch of people in jail, realistically. I think there's better ways to go about it. He also funded Contra groups in Latin America, which only increased the drug flow into the United States. So, I can't really... And then also he had the... Yeah, he armed the Arab terrorist groups. He ignored the AIDS epidemic. And then also, a lot of people contribute him to the fall of the USSR through the peace through strength thing that Teddy Roosevelt did. Except the thing was, all he did, the Soviet Union was probably going to fall anyway. They had a bunch of stagflation. There was like zero innovation in the Soviet Union. Everybody was kind of just sick and tired of losing everything to the US. And, you know, the invasion of Afghanistan was a flop and a failure for them. And they really just didn't have much going on at the time. So Reagan sped it up. Like, he sped up the fall of the Soviet Union. He sped up the collapse of the Berlin Wall, all this stuff. Which is why I'm giving him, you know, some brownie points, why he's a little bit higher than maybe he otherwise would be. But in doing so, in speeding up an event that would have happened anyway, he did also triple the national debt. Like, that's not great. So overall, I think I'm going to keep him in B tier. I'd probably put him, like, here. I'd probably put him above Nixon because Watergate was really bad. He did have a lot of upsides, but I think the bad is kind of about even. You know what I mean? And now, last but not least, because we're not doing any modern, and I wouldn't consider George H.W. modern, I'm going to put him in the mid tier, okay? Because he didn't do much. All right. he had an economic crisis during his presidency. He did raise taxes when he said, "Read my lips, no new taxes," which that is a lot of people attribute the economic crisis to Ronald Reagan's trickle-down economics kind of collapsing on itself because the businesses just took everything instead of letting it trickle down. But he did preside over the collapse of the Berlin Wall. He did preside over the fall of the Soviet Union. So that gives him some brownie points, but, you know, kind of the same as James Monroe presiding over the Era of Good Feelings. Like, it boosts him up maybe a little bit, but not really enough. There wasn't much that he did, but he had some... You know what? I'm going to put him down here, actually. I'm going to put him at the top of this, because he didn't do much bad other than the taxes. So that's like... Which ultimately cost him the election, and the economy was not great. So, we didn't use this tier. You know what? I'm gonna put Polk in this tier. I'm gonna drop Polk by 1. But you know what? Let me know what you guys thought about the list in the comments down below. Let me know what you agreed with, disagreed with. What did you not know? What did you take out of the video? But while you're down there, make sure to smash the subscribe button. And make sure to leave a like as well. Thank you guys so much for watching. The next video will be out much sooner than this one was. And I'll see y'all boys in the next one.